right. I guess we're live, all professional, knowing what we're doing. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Here to talk about Allbound and CPQ, the configured price quote. And what does it look like to get your partners involved in that process? Let's see if I can get to my next screen here. Hi, everyone. I'm Kyle. I was the co-founder and former CTO of Allbound, most likely your partner portal platform that you use. Today, I run Little Taller. We're a very channel-leaning agency that does a lot of design and development, quite a bit around marketing support, but a whole lot around business systems support, which is a perfect intro to my right hand here, Becca.
Hi, I'm Becca Candelaria. I am a senior project manager at Little Taller. I've led the team on a lot of Allbound projects, dozens, including Azuga, which we have Mitchell here with us.
Hi, Mitchell.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mitchell Smith. I am the director of operations for our indirect channel at Azuga. And I've been working with Little Taller to help roll out the CPQ process for our team.
Awesome. Thank you. And you're the smart one. You're working outside in probably a nice weather day today.
It is. It's a beautiful day in South Carolina. We luckily dodged the most of that last hurricane. Thank God.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, that does not looks quite disastrous in a lot of areas. I thought it was going to land near you guys. A little surprised where it did go.
Yeah, I mean, the inland areas definitely got a taste of what we get, and they did not fare very well, but we were lucky.
Glad you guys are safe. So, about Little Taller, we, like I said, have spun this thing out, built this agency up, kind of based off of partnership with Allbound, actually. So we have had, amongst the hundreds of enterprises we've worked with, noted here, a whole lot of them we wind up kind of intro to via the business systems relationship that we have with Allbound and how we support that, and then other systems, Salesforce, NetSuite, ERP systems. We do a lot of deep integrations into there. So sometimes it's some interesting one-off projects, and sometimes it's nice longer term, more complex things like CPQ that we'll talk about today. Mitchell, tell us about Azuga.
So Azuga, we are a GPS telematics company. So any commercial fleets that want to track their drivers and actually make sure they're actually working and going to work safely, we have plug-and-play devices that we plug into our vehicles or into their vehicles, and we track them with our software. We also have some dash cams and other tracking related products that we sell.
When my Facebook feed shows me dash cam videos, is that coming from you guys? Or is there just so many different recording solutions?
Very similar, I would imagine. We have a couple good clips of some of our customers that we tend to use on sales pitches, because they demonstrate the product working very, very well.
Yes. Yeah, because there's a variety of reasons, which I'm sure we'll get into when we talk here in a minute about your sales team, your types of products, what you have, kind of the problems they solve for it, to help us wrap our head around, because this was a big challenge. We'll talk about the challenges of putting together CPQ as us understanding what you sell and how you sell it. But it's fascinating to see that product sometimes in the wild, because we build a lot of business systems, tools and stuff, and it's like 8 to 5 we leave and they're not real world products. We don't see them on a shelf somewhere. We don't see their output coming through our social feed, like through our Facebook feed. We made LinkedIn, sure, but we don't see it elsewhere. So that is interesting that you guys have something like that is on the road and is like literally next to all of us all the time when we're driving, that there's a fleet somewhere and somebody coming through, and they're, for a variety of reasons, they're equipped. What's being driven is being tracked.
I would actually almost guarantee that any commercial vehicle that you see on the road today has some form of GPS tracking in it.
Yep.
It's not necessarily required for light duty vehicles yet, but it's pretty much the norm. And it's becoming so much of the norm that safety cams are actually almost becoming the norm now. And I think just this year, all heavy duty vehicles, and some light duty vehicles, if you drive like over state lines, are required to have what's called ELD. And ELD is basically what your semi-truck drivers have to, like, their logs of their drives to making sure that they're keeping X amount of sleep for X amount of miles driven. All of that paperwork and stuff we can actually also help manage for our customers.
So on the fleet management side, maybe this gets a little bit into the product then, is that, does that also kind of dabble into maintenance, like keeping track of mileage and machinery and other output from like the computers on board of vehicles?
Yeah, so like especially in the ELD side, we have what's called DVIR, which is, I think, driver visual inspection report. It's actually like a checklist where the driver has to go through and do an outside inspection of the vehicle to make sure everything's safe. I mean, there's so many other layers on top of that as well. I mean, gosh, we have fuel reporting. We've got maintenance, like you said, where scheduled maintenance will come up because we can track the odometers on the vehicles. I mean, let's see, we have temperature sensors for our customers that deal with like refrigerated foods, and like they need to make sure that their foods are kept at the right temperature. We have sensors that we sell that integrate with our device so that we can kind of track in a live time what the temperature is inside each one of those trucks.
And I love this concept because I'm kind of geeked by dashboards and numbers and charts and showing where machinery is. Just having my house hooked up and then I can look at my phone and not have to walk around the corner to check a thermostat is exciting to me. Yeah. So I get kind of geeked by that. So tell us then, high level then, about the products, what you guys have in your suite. So if we go to your website, it would say, I'm sure you probably sell based off of solution or industry or type of buyer, but just the products that you have. That the products that you have and how your direct team sells them, like what it is, kind of a bundled concept, or give us the kind of the lay of the land there.
Yeah. So, well, one, we have direct and indirect, right? So 2 splits of sales right there, just off the bat. But they're going to sell kind of the same products across the board. For the main categories of actual physical products, I would say we have a GPS device, and then there's several types of that GPS device to make sure that it's compatible with the type of vehicle. We also have 2 types of safety cams. One is AI enabled, one is not. We have 2 or 3 types of asset trackers, which go on like semi tractor trailers and other types of heavy machinery that doesn't necessarily have like an engine computer. We also have the auxiliary cameras that pair with the AI cameras, and we have a side and a rear version of those. We have all of our software optional add-on driver features. So there's different levels of service of software that we offer, and different like software packages we can get with like posted speed limit alerts and Azuga coaching, which is like a coaching module, all these different sorts of add-ons. So there's all of that, and then there's also all the associated cables that comes along with all those packages.
By the way, this makes even more sense to me now than even after we worked through this project. So I could see that a truck could have something plugged into the truck, like underneath the dashboard, like when you go to get your car checked at emissions and they plug into the computer. So something's plugged in there, dash cams up on top, so a variety of dash cams, and then those are dependent kind of upon the unit of car that you have or truck or whatever that is as to how those things plug in. Extra cameras, tags to put on other devices, like you said, that don't have computers, like the back of a semi truck. If you have a whole bunch of those in your fleet, you want to keep track of where they are.
We can even track like lawnmowers now. We even had the ability to, like, we had a lawn service and we were tracking their lawnmowers.
I mean, work with a band and track all their guitars.
Yeah, I mean, we could.
Those things have been known to walk off. So
yeah,
fascinating. Okay, that makes a ton of sense. And then so therein comes a bit of the complexity about your CPQ inside of Salesforce. So, but real quick about your partners, then, how do we refer to them? Are they resellers?
Technically, yes. I guess you would consider them a value-added reseller. Yeah.
Okay, so the VAR scenario here. So when if I'm a partner working with you guys and I'm a VAR, and I for whatever reason have a group that I've found, a regional group that's got a lot of equipment, and this would be a good fit, am I bringing it to you? Like I'm kind of working with co-selling it with you. Like I'm getting them into the mix, but I'm quoting this with you, but am I presenting it back and like really trying to win and close the deal? Or is that your team or a little bit of both?
We have a whole mix because it really just depends on our partners. We really don't discriminate when it comes to if you want to sign up and become a reseller and try and, make some margin on reselling this product, we will absolutely sign you up and train you how to do it. The idea, especially in the beginning, is yes, we're going to hold your hand through the whole process. Most of our sales guys will pretty much run the demo for probably the first couple months, right? Until the reseller starts to get comfortable enough to hopefully want to just go out and do it on their own, right? A lot of our older partners that have been here for a couple of years, they kind of just go out and sell on their own. And then they can actually just come right into the PRM tool now and place their own orders.
Is it competitive? I mean, because I know the fleet management space is competitive, and you guys are highly rated, but I'm sure if we were to check a G2 crowd or something, we see the players in this space. So do your partners, is it competitive where they could have potentially a relationship with your competitors and having to be choosing you as the preferred vendor?
Absolutely. I mean, we have some partners that, we'll never make a partner sign what's like a non-compete thing, whatever, right? So we never make our partners do that. A lot of our partners do sell multiple types of telematics offerings across the board. And yes, so we're competing within the partner. The partner is also probably competing within other value-added resellers, could be other value-added resellers of Azuga. Also could be just other resellers of other telematics products. But this is where, that whole value add part comes in. It's why am I going to you for this product? What are you bringing to the table, as opposed to why don't I just go straight to Azuga to get it, right? Sometimes it's price, sometimes it's customer service, sometimes we have integrated partners, right? Because we have a completely public API database where we can set up integrations and you can actually just pull the data that you need over to whatever systems that you want to show it in, right? So a lot of options there.
Understood. Okay, so for your direct sales is running CPQ out of Salesforce.
Yes.
And then, so if a lead came in, and I'm a sales rep working with a prospect, I'm building out my CPQ for them based off the units that they need, the cameras they need, the subsequent cabling, any additional add-ons of extra cameras or extra services. I, as a sales rep, am empowered to bundle all that up right there in Salesforce using just standard, I say standard, but Salesforce CPQ module, but then highly customized to your data structure.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's within CPQ, they call them product bundles, right? So we have a lot of product bundles across the board within the company, but we only have certain product bundles available within each Salesforce price book, right? So some of our channels, for example, our direct side sells different levels of our GPS plan, like Safe Fleet, Complete Fleet, and something else. I don't remember. But they're different tiered levels of the GPS plan. Whereas our resellers pretty much just sell kind of a standard reseller plan that's kind of approved at a wholesale rate across the board. And so the product bundle within CPQ and Salesforce is actually different for each price book. If that makes sense.
It does. So, because we know that we tend to have different price books internally for our direct sales teams for a variety of reasons. Could be geography, currency, different offerings. Who's to say? And then from there, once you get partners involved, price books can change even further. In this case, I know you guys, as we'll get to a second, you've got negotiated pricing of some products with some partners, extra components that maybe are reseller rates versus wholesale rates. So all those complexities get met in there. So in Salesforce, if I'm a direct sales rep and I win a deal and then the quote's there and the quote is an order, so the quote becomes an order ultimately. and then it's placed, that does what? I think from there, you guys are triggering out for fulfillment to another system.
Yeah, so it's once our quote is what's called accepted in our world, that automatically triggers an order to be created from those quote lines. And that is notifying our fulfillment team to actually start pulling those devices off the shelf, recording the device serial numbers, packing the boxes, and then our engineering, or I think the other part of ours, like the software fulfillment side of the team, is actually creating the customer portal, assigning that list of devices that was just recorded to that portal, and then we're shipping the devices out to the customer.
So hence some of the complexity of the details of the data that we're gathering in Salesforce, because that's getting passed off to another system and triggering a lot of other systems. So if that data is not structured properly, other things could go wrong down the line.
Well, then you have Zora too. So we have the billing system on the back end. So that was another kind of, I would say, speed bump for us when we were developing this process. Was we actually didn't only have to make the data work for Salesforce, is we had to make the data also be configured in the right way for Zora on the back end. Because in our system, when the partner places the order, really no human touches the order outside of packing the box, and throughout the whole process, even all the way through to billing, it's all fully automated.
Got it. And then the impact that this has on your processes or your sales by getting partners involved is that, what does that look like? I mean, is it the easy answer that it's just speeds things up and it's less humans having to email stuff back and forth?
It's a lot of error reduction. I think just all of us kind of know, humans aren't perfect. And the more humans touch something, the more chances it can go wrong. And that was honestly what we were seeing a lot of. Our process before we moved to CPQ was completely manual in 3 different systems. So we would be sending in an order via email. Orders team would be creating the orders case in Salesforce. We would then be manually creating the billing case, and we used NetSuite at the time. And then we'd also then manually be provisioning the portal on the back end for the software. So it was a lot of chances for things to go wrong, and we were getting a lot of errors. And even just, I think we've only been rolled out for CPQ for about a week and a half now, and seen far less errors already.
That if the errors that we see, and I know Becca, because they come to you, they're programmatic. And so I'd rather have the programmatic errors, because then there's a programmatic solution. We're like, oh, well, all orders since this date, here's the issue. Fix the issue so it doesn't continue, and then programmatically fix the data that maybe had an issue because, that did face the issue.
Yeah, exactly. I think we had 1 or 2 things where the pricing was coming through with a weird value, but wasn't really the end of the world in our system. Because all that we had to do was just tweak the value within Salesforce, and then it was fine. So it wasn't a big deal.
Not point of sale.
Exactly.
Yeah, Becca, we have that on some other systems you've worked on where you're like, we don't want it to go wrong right away because it is an approval process and point of sale.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's a whole different series of conversations you wind up having of like, how do we?
Yeah, and a lot of the reason that we try to sell this to the partner, right, is like you said, speed. And so speed is going to be a big difference maker, since it isn't manual and not an email process. I've already had 2 partners email me saying wow, I can't believe how much faster the orders are going out. And I don't notice because I don't really pay attention to the orders that closely beforehand. I was kind of just developing the CPQ process. But that was just kind of good to see, they're liking the system, and they're seeing a value to it, and it just being faster. I mean, if your customer's getting a device 2 or 3 days ahead of time, that's 2 or 3 days more that reseller can bill that customer.
Oh, it's actually, time's money in sales. We know that time kills deals. But in your case, yours is, it's when it's on. So the faster it's on, the faster you're billing. So go.
Mm-hmm. And even some of these companies where it's required for ELD, they need that service as soon as possible, because they could be keeping paper logs and manual logs for the time that they're waiting to get this new service in and actually installed and onboarded and ready to go. So that's also a big sense of urgency, especially on the ELD side.
Got it. So I think the components of this and what we know we're here talking about, but the components of this tend to be, of course, your partner-facing portal where they interact, Salesforce, and then this kind of the motions that are mixed a little bit in this components are in here. So we won't read all of that off, but I would love to take a quick look at this. I think I've already got it pulled up here. So looking at this, this is scary to a lot of people. They're like, oh, what are we going to do? Oh my God, the process is, and it can feel like it's a lot to bite off. I know that your system is complex. You have a lot going on, but I think that we feel a lot better about it, documenting it to flow this down to say, and we will see this in motion in a minute, but to understand that, on the order form, what is it that we're looking at? So whether just starting here again, I won't read all of this, but what we know that we kept doing out throughout the process was learning more, plugging in more, learning and more, plugging in more, whether that's the actual partner placing the order or a channel manager placing the order on behalf of a partner. What do workflows look like in there, and us keeping track of that flow to understand that what did we need to happen on the business level and making sure that it's doing it inside of the data entry model, and then notes to ourselves, because there's all of these little caveats, how people select it, whether they're buying like a package or individual one-offs, subsequent choices that they can make, new things that we've identified that we're going to add next. We're like, okay, next we're going to add in and keep scaling it and add in more features and always coming back to this. So the component winds up being the user interface of how that user interacts with it, the data we present inside of there, the rules, if this, else this, get accounted for, knowing that what we feed into Salesforce works, that the order's submitted to Salesforce. In this case, I suppose really you have a lot more. You've got accounts, opportunities, orders, order line items. So in this case, see what we're doing. We're creating an opportunity, a quote line items, triggering calculations, things we learned in the process. Oh, we need to wait 5 minutes before changing something to let other Salesforce processes take hold. That's fun discoveries.
Yeah, that was a week's worth of, we could not figure out why it was breaking, and it was because Salesforce was just a little slower than Allbound.
Yeah, there's a diagram somewhere else that you and I don't know about, probably, that is other workflows and triggers in that system that also have to run, and they run whenever they run. So of all silly little things, can we wait 5 minutes before we change one field value? Yes.
It fixed everything as soon as we did that. It was so funny.
It was brutal getting there. And then the third component of that is monitor Salesforce. So oftentimes we see people just need something submitted to Salesforce. That's the end of it. In this case, submit it, and then we're monitoring to keep it updated. Sometimes that workflow is that users can keep making updates in one or both systems. But in your case, the third component is monitoring Salesforce for, depending on how it was submitted, who submitted it, and what the stage it's in, to what else we need to do to trigger and sync back updates to keep the partner updated on what's happening. So a lot of moving parts inside of there. Not nearly as scary once we write them down.
Yeah, this was something that I really wish we did first. And not last.
We're ratting ourselves out there. But so, all right. So CPQ in the wild, we've said a lot of words and pointed to some pictures and whatnot. But Mitchell, let's flip over and have you share a screen real quick, and let's take a look. And we don't have to submit the form and see all the actions trigger, but let's just see what this experience looks like inside of Allbound. And then we can take a look at kind of like an order, like a final order created in Salesforce, so we can see that point A to point B motion there.
Yes. So
okay. 1 sec, let me figure out how to get you to share here. I think I have to stop sharing my screen, and
I can see it. I can see the form.
Okay, we're there now. Okay, good.
All right, cool. So right now, I am actually, excuse me, long day. I'm actually logged in as one of our channel managers. So this is we actually enabled this form to not only be partner facing, but to also kind of enable our channel managers to also place orders on our partner's behalf, just in case, right? And we wanted a process that was going to be quicker and simpler than just doing it within Salesforce itself. So as you can see, the first question here is just the channel manager selecting from a list of accounts that he owns within PRM. Oops, I unselected it. And we have newer add-on. So this is just the type of customer. Is it a new customer where we need all this customer information, or do we already have it? And then we can just do it with a customer ID lookup. Whoopsie. And then we get down
that's common. We run into that all the time. New versus existing customer.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to see over time what your analytics look like on that.
Yeah, to be honest, we see obviously a lot of our larger orders are placed via new, right? Because, you know, new customer, you're taking usually the whole fleet at one time and putting them into GPS, and then your add-ons are usually smaller orders if customers are adding, you know, vehicles, or, you know, we hired another driver or something like that, right? But besides the point, we get down to where the magic happens, where I like to call the magic happens. We have a little toggle here, which is actually selecting our contract type. Our partners have the ability to either buy our devices up front for a lower data cost on the back end, or they can just amortize the cost of that hardware into the contract, right? And then we have all of our products, like I said. You have your GPS, all of our cameras, and then some of our other categories. And as you click into these, we have the more specific accessories, or more specific cable, or more specific GPS type. All of this does do a live price lookup for our partners, because like Kyle said, we have actually something called contracted price for our partners within Salesforce. So our price actually varies on a partner by partner basis, and this form can actually account for that. And then from here, you would just actually submit the order.
Yeah. And this gets a little interesting because, like you said, you have a bundle. So depending on which product I start with, I have the option of how I want it, kind of monthly versus annual in a lot of our SaaS world. But in this case, whether you're paying more upfront, more later, you know, either way. Bundle, so the product, and then all of the already built on accessories that have to come with it. And so some of that's software, some of that's hardware. Then you have shipping and handling. But then a user might, you know, sit there and, you know, goof around with that, update quantity. So, well, I've got 20 trucks, I need 20. They may say, by the way, especially probably more on add-on maybe than initial sell. Maybe they need some other specific things, additional cables, additional cameras, small extra little accessories. So they can then keep adding those on. And I suppose some of these accessories could already be bundled, but now they need to add another one at the actual non-bundled price, the individual price line.
Yeah, and actually, so it's kind of funny. One day I did test this completely about a month ago, where I went in and selected every single product that we had available and added it to an order to see if I could break it. And it accepted the order. So it was pretty impressive.
We got lucky. So by the way, that the testing of that is insane, because do you test every single scenario? Well, in this case, I think you nailed it, which is the best way to test every scenario is just to add everything one time.
Well, there was several types of testing, right, that we had to do. So we had to do the channel manager facing version, because our channel managers have the ability to change the price off of whatever's contracted for that partner. If you're logged in as a partner, they don't have that ability. So their contracted price is locked in at whatever that rate is. So there was testing that difference. There was testing making sure that the products were syncing correctly on both the bundled and the purchase, the hardware side up front. We had to make sure that when we were testing in Sandbox and we were aligned with the Salesforce Sandbox, that we were using the correct CRM IDs, We had to make sure that the users were aligned the right way with account owners. So there's quite a bit of setting up that was needed to do the testing. But once we had a couple accounts set up, it was fairly easy just to run it here, and I could crank out probably 20 orders in 5 minutes.
Wow, that's actually really good to hear. So Becca, on that, then as we were defining, continue to learn more, add more, you and the engineers, you have test cases that you document that are documented that you test against. So a developer tests against it, you test against it. What does that look like?
Yeah, so kind of what Mitchell was saying too, we have the different test cases that we document here. Step 1, do this as a channel manager. Go submit the order, and we go back to the workflows, compare the workflows to our test just to prove out that it's working as it was supposed to be.
And I suppose in that sometimes you also have to break it, because in testing it's real easy to follow instructions, and the other one is don't follow instructions and go do whatever you want, to just go.
Yeah. Those random people that are like, what happens if I just do this over and over and over?
That was me when I was pretty much doing that put everything in here order, right? Like we would never in a million years see an order like that. Hopefully, at least I don't think we ever would, right? And so it was good. It was just nice to see it actually work.
Agreed. Okay, so over in Salesforce, then, the data that we're kind of monitoring build this, so an account has contracted prices. So we've got contracted prices, products, product bundles, price books, lots of monitoring to keep that up to date. So it's up to date pricing for that partner or that channel manager acting on behalf of a partner to get into to make sure that we're building up the right bill of materials.
Yeah, I mean, so for new accounts, for new orders, right, we're creating a new account, we're creating a new opportunity under that account, we're assigning that account and opportunity the parent account of the partner submitting the order. We're filling out all of this, which is the quote underneath that opportunity. All of this is either being pulled with some sort of logic from Salesforce, or it's just being carried over from the order form. You have your line items, which actually are the products themselves and the little software packages that come along for the ride. Once we've waited the 5 minutes, we push the quote to the accepted stage, which in our Salesforce triggers our order to be generated. And that is kind of the process in a nutshell.
And you go quotes to orders because of some workflows where some submissions, like channel manager submitted, need to be reviewed as while there's still a quote and not yet moved to an order?
Yeah, because since the channel managers have the ability to submit orders at a price that isn't contracted, we have an internal approval process for that. So we've set it up so Salesforce actually triggers our internal approval process. So upper management gets notified and they actually approve the quote. Once that quote is approved, since the channel manager actually submitted the order and the e-signature in PRM isn't really valid at that point, we actually generate a PandaDoc out of Salesforce. We have an integration with PandaDoc. So we trigger a PandaDoc to get sent to the partner for the partner's approval. Once the partner signs that, the quote automatically gets moved from presented to accepted.
Excellent. Yeah, that your process diagram there is pretty crazy, because you have another party working with you guys on that automations inside of Salesforce for all of those business rules of what triggers, doesn't trigger.
Yeah, because that's actually, we kind of copied the direct process a little bit, because our direct side, when they're generating the quote for a direct customer, they build the quote like this, and then they actually generate a PandaDoc and send that to the customer for the customer's approval. And then when the customer signs that, that's what actually generates the order. In our world, it's just channel manager to partner instead of internal sales to customer directly.
We say this a lot, like in pre-sales when we're meeting with customers who need something done, and they ask about how much we manipulate, change, alter their systems. And I'm not kidding when I say, no, we learn about your processes because we have to align to them. And I mean, we in the absolute general sense of we in the channel have to align to direct sales processes with a couple of extra data points.
Oh yeah, and it's not even just everything we see here. It's all of those other hidden features make it align with Zora and the other integrations and all the other automations that we have within Salesforce. I don't know, there's probably, you could probably get the exact number from Aldo, but I would guess somewhere between 10 to 20 hidden field mappings as part of this quote or as well.
Yeah, that's Becca. That's where that death by 1,000 cuts come, where it's like one more field, we're good. Wait, one more field change, we're good.
It drives me crazy, trust me.
Oh. Becca's nicer than I am. I lose my mind and swear about it. He's just like,
oh no, it's not you guys. It's my sales teams, right? Because so like my sales team will be like, oh, this looks great. They use it for a week, and then they'll be like, can we actually have this get added here? Like I think I asked Becca recently. And we have like the quote ID and order ID get added to our table like we had before, right? And so it's just, now it's just all kind of nitpicky little stuff, which is nice because it's easy, I feel like, to do and to map and to fix. But obviously just never ending.
Well, there's only so much you can learn ahead of time on a project. Some are easier than others, but there's only so much to learn ahead of time. There's a lot that you learn in the process. This is why the process exists. Then there's the build it, launch it to some beta customers, some friendlies, slow roll it out to some friendlies, and then get feedback, adjust on that, then roll it out to the broader public and keep going. So, it's, you got to get out in the wild and monitor it and then learn and adjust.
Exactly. And that's pretty much what we did. We did a soft rollout for, I think, 10 of our partners for about a week or two, just to make sure that nothing was catastrophically broken. But everything looked good. And then we pretty much did a channel-wide rollout. I wouldn't say we have full adoption quite yet, but we're only really 2 days into, I think, official rollout started October 1st.
Yeah, Becca, we can't underscore enough that roll out to friendlies because some partners are more vocal than others.
Yeah, and I would definitely say don't roll out first to your most important partners either. Definitely, pick someone that's middle of the road. That's usually a good test subject. Someone that's going to have some orders, but they're not someone that is going to bankrupt the company if you lose them. But I don't see why any of our partners ever would have had any issues, because we still had our old order process available, and it still is today. Like, I mean, in an emergency situation, our partners can still go in and place an order the old way. So it's definitely good to at least have a backup plan that way also.
That's a great point. And actually, it's a good takeaway for us to do more thought process around. I'll add it to my post-mortem list we'll talk about in a minute, is more what if scenarios here, because we do that a lot for our information security practice, where we walk through a system and go, what if this fails? What if this fails? What if this fails? How would we know? How would we respond? How do we know? How do we respond? I don't know that and I appreciate that all of a sudden, that kind of light bulb going off going, what if when this does roll out, how would we know and how would we respond? I think we just kind of go, cool, it's live, pat ourselves on the back, and then wait for the other shoe to drop maybe. But I think that's probably a good takeaway, is to think a little bit more about that too, of do we have a backup plan, and and have people ready on standby.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been, even throughout this process, I'm probably going into Salesforce at least once an hour just to make sure that everything looks okay, and tweaking things if I need to make tweaks, and then sending emails to Becca saying, hey, can we take a look at this and make sure that this isn't something that's on the little taller side, and maybe it's something that's in Salesforce. But it could be either.
And the Becca saying, I added it to the UAT document.
Yeah, pretty much.
She'll talk to that in a second. All right, cool. Let me flip back over here on the sharing side.
Absolutely. I will stop sharing.
I'm going to share my screen. Back over to this one and share. Okay. So postmortem, perfect thing. So let's break this up in 3 categories. We'll start with you, Becca. What would you do differently pre-development on if we were starting this project over? During the next one, what's our takeaway, and what do you do pre-development that makes all of this better?
Biggest one is workflows right from the start. So as we work through discovery, let's start laying out what we think the workflows are going to look like. That way we have a base to build off of as we go through the process. I know we kind of learned that one the hard way on this project where we did the workflows after, but was a good learning curve.
And in our defense, we thought it'd be a little bit simpler. We were naive.
Very.
Even I was naive, though, in your defense. So your naivete came from my naivete.
Well, trust but verify, and I trusted, I didn't verify. Yeah, I think the visual one is true on the documentation, and then that's big for me. Mitchell, what else do you have for pre-development that you would do differently next time?
Well, I think I said it earlier, right? Flowchart first, right? That make the process as visual as you can. I definitely think that's a big part of this. Also, if you're just starting to develop CPQ as its own process within Salesforce internally, as you're kind of doing this for your partners, like we were, highly recommend getting your Salesforce team to try and align the development of CPQ within Salesforce with Little Taller. That I feel like was a big gap for us, is that we actually third-party developed our CPQ process within Salesforce. They were not told to make the process very partner-facing. And so not only was it hard for Little Taller to integrate and automate this process, but the process just itself internally, even if our salesmen were using it within Salesforce, was going to be a big pain. So highly recommend, if you can and get ahead of it, trying to design CPQ and Salesforce to be as partner facing as possible.
That and getting those, like I said, I'll reiterate and underscore that one, of getting the other players involved, because it's not just when you say your Salesforce team, that's not just sort of an internal administrator who owns it. I feel like you have several people who have quite a bit of control over Salesforce as administrators, you being one of them. It's the third party that you had also helping build that out, some other experts in the field helping on that, consultants, that I think they would have probably, once we added them, oh boy, the email threads and all the things got really long. We would figure out how to get them involved and keep all of our transactions organized and keep noise for everybody to a minimum, because we create a lot of noise in our replies too, and so that's unfair to them. So I think getting them into the process would be great, because during the process is most definitely where we learned even more. I would throw out one thing during the process that I would consider, which is, speaking of naivete, keep thinking that, oh, we're almost done. Because I collectively, we're all feeling good. We're like, yeah, dang, this worked. The last thing we discovered worked. We're almost done. And so at no point until the very end was I like, oh, God damn it, let's go ahead and stop. Let's just document everything. Because I'm so thinking, okay, one more thing, and then we'll go live, and then we can breathe, and then we can get caught up. And that was naive. I mean, I love that you guys are shaking your head, because we could have done that weeks ago. It didn't take that long.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even tell you how many times I told my sales team, all right, we're ready to go. They're not ready to go.
Oh my God.
Because I mean, like, you'd run a couple orders and everything would look good, and then you would go and maybe like change the partner and it wouldn't work, or you would go in and submit the order as a channel manager and it wouldn't work, or we'd move it over to production and we had something wrong with like the CRM IDs, and then it wouldn't work, right? So it was kind of never ending. I will say, never say that it's ready to roll out until you've done at least probably 2 or 3 tests in your production environment, because things can change from sandbox, I swear.
Oh goodness. Yeah. So Becca, talk to us about that one though, about the sandbox versus prod, and that kind of during the process of move to prod but don't broad launch. How often are you coaching that?
Every time. So most times when we move to production, that's exactly what we do is we'll set up a group, say, hey, we have a couple users in this group. These are the users that, I mean, if you have a couple partners that you're wanting to test with, help you testing, then they're added to that group. Otherwise, you just have a couple test accounts that you're using in that group that you can go log in as different users and test different scenarios in production to ensure that the two environments were the same, that nothing's different in your sandbox Salesforce compared to production or sandbox Allbound compared to production. It's a lot of factors.
Yeah. I'm not great at, I'm definitely those guys of like, calling things final, done. It's calling them easy. I'm like, I use the wrong words all the time like that, because that definitely gives the wrong impression. And so I'm glad to hear you say that, Mitchell, of like not calling it that. Like, it's pretty easy when designers are working on a file and they hand you a file and it says -final. You're like, oh, okay, final 2, final 3, final 4. All right.
Yeah,
So,
and I highly recommend also having a freshly refreshed Salesforce sandbox
oh
at the
God,
start of developing this.
Yes, that is crucial.
Yeah.
and also Becca, during the process, we can refresh sandboxes, but just don't do it without conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes.
Like, it's
Well,
fine.
I never touched the Allbound sandbox. I never tried to refresh that one because I just didn't ever want to do that. But the issue that we had was we were working on like 3 different other integrations that were using that sandbox internally, and they were like, no, we can't refresh it, we're going to lose everything. So we had to basically wait for those integrations to be done, and then we could refresh. So if you can create a standalone sandbox instance for CPQ testing, that's probably something I would also highly recommend, just so you can always keep it refreshed and up to date.
Got it. All right. And after rollout, well, we'll circle back because we're still rolling it out because nothing's final, but it's live and in the wild on that one. And I'm sure in hindsight, we may learn a little something there, but I think that probably is more of a question like you've already addressed, which is internal communication and internal rollout and helping our teams understand, the progressive nature of development and that it's ongoing forever.
Yeah, I would say the only issue that we've run into recently is that some of our partners log in and the order form doesn't have any products in it because we don't have their pricing set up in Salesforce yet. So, it's hard for the PRM form to pull data that doesn't exist. And so that's really been kind of the only complaint so far, other than like maybe some minor confusion around some of our partners adding cables, even though the cables were like automatically added for cameras. They didn't see it on the order form and they would just add extra cables, which in the end isn't really a big deal because we just go into the order and delete that line item.
That's a lot to read, though.
It is, and it isn't. I mean, like, some of our partners actually like to see that stuff because, I mean, that's comes into where that human error was coming in. We would have accounts that randomly, just out of the blue, we'd have 100 good orders, but then for some reason they wouldn't get like 3 of those software packages, right? That get automatically added to that order. And so now some of our partners, like, they have to see it or else they won't approve it.
Got it. So I think a lot of the takeaways and advice that we have in here is follow process, which in my team we first tell you that I am the worst at following process and the biggest violator of it. I'm like, yeah, process, and I preach it, but I'm terrible. I'm a chaos monkey. And then Becca pointing out too, where we did not do a super diligent job in this. So Becca, tell us about what this looks like, the process in general, and that we should highly be focused on in every project.
All right. So our process first starts with discovery. That's, of course, where we're looking into how does your system flow? What's expected functionality, which goes directly into documentation. During discovery, we're documenting what we're finding, making sure we have it written down, making sure we have the workflows up to date. So that way, when we can hand it over to the team to start configuring and customizing, they have what they need. And there's not open questions, right? It's not like, oh, well, in this scenario, let's just assume. They have it documented. And then from there, that documentation also helps us when we launch or before we launch to test it. So that way we have that documentation we can base all of our testing on to prove that we've met those documented requirements. From there, we push to production. We don't just leave you hanging there either. We go into support mode, and we're helping you as you're, talking to different partners, getting feedback, dealing with any issues if they do arise.
Yeah, because as a vendor, who has to write a scope of work of what we do to get paid and make it a profitable engagement, we're always worried about this process, making sure that what we do is there. We can get to the finish line. We know collectively what the finish line is, but that's also for the Mitchells of the world. It's for him working with his team. So we don't set him up for his company to be like, why isn't it done yet? And for him to have to tell them because you guys keep adding more shit onto it. That's why. So some of that is actually material that, Mitchell needs to work with his team on internally so that they see where it is and that they understand that each of their additional requests ask things learned, giving them plenty of grace there too, but things that they've learned, things that they've asked for, that it just prolongs this, adds complexity, adds more time, or it just needs to get in rows. So a lot of that, Mitchell, is there for you as well.
Oh yeah. I mean, I would say a big part of it's for me as well, because let's say down the line, I mean, I wanted to make sure that the PRM order form was configured for future use as well. So I mean, if we ever decide to add products, or if we ever decide, we're changing our packaging or provisioning, what do we need to make Salesforce configured and make that look like to make sure that the PRM order form is correctly pulling it into the partner view?
Yeah, the dynamic what's next thing, because we'll see that a lot where 6 months later you hear back, you're like, why isn't this auto updating, or why can't I change this, or why doesn't this account for another process? And you're like, well, it wasn't here written down, tested, approved, signed off, launched, and supported yet, so it's new.
Yeah, and I would actually say ours is fairly future proof. I mean, we even throughout the process of rollout ended up adding a GPS type to our offering, and it showed up within 2 minutes of adding it to Salesforce. So It was good.
This screen, by the way, I'm going to throw these numbers together. I think these are a bit silly compared to what we just did. But, for some smaller projects, your investment, Mitchell, is, would be process review, helping, support and change a few things, and then testing. You can add this, you have a multiple of this because of what we talked about. Oh God, the things we learned along the way, an old sandbox, other parties working on it too. Heck, we spent a whole week on a 1 or 0 value and when to trigger it. Right? So that was brutal.
Yeah.
But the point is that this is scalable to what you need it to be, and we're in it with you. So we're like, let's just keep going, and get it done eventually. But I think, Becca, you've seen these, that some of these are actually way more simple. It's a handful of products and pull them, display them, discounted price, maybe not, get it to a PDF state, get it sent off, and call it a day.
Yeah, those ones are fun and easy.
Look, some of those, even when talking with the customers pre-sales, they're like, oh, our processes are crazy and they're really tough, but we tend to streamline them down anyways. And in the end, it winds up not being that bad. Even this one, this one is complex in that we learned way too many things during the process that was felt terrible. But in hindsight, I'm like, wow, actually, it's not really all that complex. Once we got it documented and can retell the story.
Yeah, I think once you get it documented, it's not so bad. I think the other complexity too is that our entire business is 100% direct sales first. Right. And our partner channel is really only 5 years old. So we've really kind of had to pick up the pieces of the direct sales and try and make do with what we had. I think this can become a lot simpler for some other companies that potentially only sell in a partner model, or have a bit more separation within their direct and indirect than we do, where for us, it's very similar.
Awesome. Well, team, thank you for recapping this with us today, and for I don't see any questions on the for on the chat today. So I think we're free and liberated to get on with our lives today. But if you find this interesting, here's some information, hit me up. Happy to get online anytime, meet with you, talk about your systems, your structure, what we can do to help, things we've learned. And Mitchell, people could also, I assume, find you out on LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn. You can go to azuga.com. If you want to become a partner, please reach out. We can absolutely sign you up. It's really not hard, and there's no stress to you, I promise.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, team, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thanks, Kyle. Thanks, Becca.
Talk to you guys soon.
Bye.